On today's episode of the NBA Draft Junkies Podcast, I got my boy Leif back here with me, and we're going to discuss everything AJ Dybantsa. Stay tuned. Tuning in, I appreciate you for watching, listening, subscribing. If you're not following me already, please follow me. I'm at Draft Junkie James. Leif, where can they find you at?
It's just my name, Leif Thulin, with the L and the T capitalized.
All right, let's get right to it. AJ Dybantsa, fresh off of I guess you could say, a monster performance against Clemson, where he helped erase a 20-point halftime lead. He outscored Clemson by himself in the second half. He out-assisted Clemson by himself in the second half. Leif, what were your thoughts on this game from AJ Dybantsa?
Well, I was really impressed that he did what the game said to do. He scored when he was supposed to score, not kind of predetermined, premeditated reads. And his assists were natural reads as opposed to, I'm going to back you down, I'm going to get to the elbow, and then I'm going to throw it when the defense is like, okay, we know they're coming. They tried that in the first half, and they went scoreless for 8 minutes. Second half starts, AJ said, you know what, I'm not going to lose this game, and imposed his will on the game like he should do more frequently. And he showed some of that twitchiness, some of that explosivity with the dribble. And he was less predictable, and the defense didn't know it was coming. And so then he could score because they didn't know it was coming. And then when they tried to react and throw more bodies to him, he'd alley-oop Keita. He'd throw a good skip pass. And I was really impressed with his takeover.
Yeah, this is, I believe, the third time that he's done this. Well, not necessarily will the team back, but the third time that he's made adjustments at halftime to bounce back and have a monster second half. I know he did it against Clemson. We saw him do it against UConn on the road. I think it's very admirable, and it says a lot about his character, about what's going on between his ears, that he doesn't let a bad half dictate how he plays in the second half, and also that he's able to adjust to how the defense is guarding him. I will say that Clemson, they didn't do a good job of getting the right defenders on him. In the first half, they had some of their taller defenders on him. I believe it was a 6'10 guy, another 6'10 guy. I can't remember.
They had Jake Wallin was initially on him. Then they had Nick Davidson and Carter Welling.
Yeah, and those guys did a better job on him. But then for whatever reason, he had the 6'4 guys guarding him in the second half. And he's already hard enough to guard, but he had a good lather going, and he just was rising up over the top of them and shooting. His ability to shoot off of both shoulders. I know we see him catch the ball in that right mid-post area a lot, and he likes to go middle, but it looked like maybe the first time this season, but it looked like he was intentional on showing you that he can turn off of both shoulders. And that really makes him really, really hard to guard. What do you think about Leif? There are people who do what we do, cover draft, cover college basketball. What do you think about his lower block numbers, lower steal numbers? Do you think that's an indication of what kind of defender he is, or is it just something that you think that he needs to make a better effort in doing so as far as creating defensive plays?
Well, I think it's disappointing in the sense that he has the athletic capacity to guard these guys. I watched him play against John Blackwell at Wisconsin in person, and he thwarted all those drives because he was long enough and he looked engaged. But in a lot of these games, he just looks lackadaisical, and I think it's a want-to issue more so than a athleticism or ability effort. And he Boozer doesn't wow you defensively. He's in the right spots. He walls up. Peterson doesn't defend. Peterson can in the sense that he's got long arms and he slides his feet fairly well. But I think both AJ and Darren are not necessarily unwilling, but inconsistent in their effort defensively. So I'm not terribly concerned because I've watched him do it well. You'd like him to be nonstop. Cooper Flagg's greatest gift, in my opinion, was motor. The dude would process everything unbelievably and figure out what worked, what didn't. And his development of skills accelerated more quickly than most do. But the dude was a maniac competitively. And I don't see that defensively from any of these big three. But I'm not concerned about the low stock numbers, steal block. I think it could be higher, but I also don't think BYU plays like this super risk taking way that would inflate his stock numbers. But one point you made that I really wanted to reiterate was when I talk about predictability, I use that as a negative term because like it works a lot for AJ. His little mid post, get into the middle, shoot. He was going the opposite way. He was going baseline. He would get there and he'd spin off and go towards the baseline and shoot a mid range jump shot away from where the double was coming from. Whereas usually if the double comes, he just passes over the top of it. And he was able to use counters that we hadn't seen yet. And then, like you said, I don't know why they went to a 6'4" guard as opposed to a trio of 6'10" guys that they were guarding with in the first half. So I'm with you. Weird decision by Brad Ronnell and Clemson. But I liked that he was able to attack the difference of what they were trying to employ defensively to stop him. It was totally geared towards stopping AJ in the first half, and it worked well. In the second half, it was the same thing, and he broke that mold, and the coaches made a change, and he broke that. And so I thought that the NBA progression of all those moves he has were finally showcased as opposed to just using one or two that I felt like limited his athletic upside. Like, all he could do is just show, hey, I can rise up and knock down a jumper. Now you saw the creativity and things that I'd been begging to see that I'd heard about. And I still think his handle is a little less sharp than I necessarily knew, but at least he showed some wiggle as opposed to just brawn and being bigger and taller and elevating.
You know, now that you bring that up, and I'm wondering, and you got to see him against North Carolina live, correct? Do you think the recipe going forward is to put a taller defender on AJ because his handle is good, but he's not a great ball handler right now. There's potential for him. He has the creativity, but you can tell like he's just a lot more comfortable playing with his back to the basket in the mid post. Like that's where you get to see a lot of his skill work. But do you think ultimately, and then in college basketball is, you got to have personnel to do these things. But do you think ultimately you'll see more teams put their power forward on AJ rather than trying to match him with a guard, considering he's just going to rise up, however you say it, over the defender and shoot?
Yeah, I would. I thought that they played Jaron Stevenson on him more than Caleb Wilson, but Caleb Wilson made his first name of like, and people knew who Caleb Wilson was, but like his emphatic dunks weren't necessarily wowing to the draft community. It was his blocks and deflections while guarding AJ. And he looked like the better athlete between the two. And I thought that was a little bit jarring because I was told AJ is just this superhuman athlete, and he didn't look like he was getting by people. Jaron Stevenson's a strong dude who's 6'10" and slides his feet beautifully. And he was able to shake him a few times. But then you put Caleb Wilson on, who's just a superb athlete, and AJ's post-ups were mitigated. And in fact, he blocked a jumper. So ever since then, I've been very much pro put a bigger body, make him score by driving past someone into help as opposed to rising up over someone and doubling and compromising your defense. So if I were game planning, I would play a longer body against him. And if you were to play a guard, I would instruct my guard to flop, which, that only works a couple times, but a couple fouls is important. Yeah. But I would play a bigger body.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it works. I mean, these next few games for BYU, they got Cal Riverside, Pacific, Abilene Christian, Eastern Washington. They're not going to be able to put up much of a fight. It's just that time of the year. You want to go into conference play healthy with some wins under your belt. But they will have Arizona at some point. You will see Kansas. I'm pretty sure. I want to see, and Lee covers Arizona. I want to see Koa Pete and AJ Dybantsa. I want to see Koa on AJ exclusively. Who else would you put on him?
I'd put Karchenkov on him. Ivan Karchenkov from Germany, 6'8", 225, moves well, strong as an ox. That's who I'd put on AJ for Arizona. Okay. So Koa, I'd like to see it from a scout's perspective, but if I were Tommy Lloyd and I was playing coach for that one, I would put Ivan Karchenkov on AJ.
Got you. Texas Tech, maybe we get to see JT Toppin guard AJ. There are other matchups. Baylor didn't really have anybody. He's going to shoot over there. I mean, Tunde's going to be physical with him, but I don't think physicality bothers AJ.
I like that matchup actually. I
Yeah,
like Tunde's physicality. Like the thing about AJ that I would say has scared me a little bit. And when I say scared, I want to reiterate this guy is a top 3 pick and he'd be number 1 in just about every draft. I don't think he's as explosive unless he gets a full head of steam. And so someone who can laterally move and kind of bump him off of spots is someone that I think can bother him. And Tunde is as twitchy and powerfully built an athlete as you're going to face. So I don't mind that in terms of him trying to be physical. I think his issues he doesn't really have much game sense, and so I think Tunde would get in foul trouble.
and that's my biggest concern with him. I think that while he does have the physical capabilities, the physical ability for somebody who is going to be smaller than AJ, you want him built like Tunde, built like a football player and athletic. But I think AJ just might end up outsmarting him. He's gonna. I can willingly bet you he'll fall for one of those pump fakes going middle, and AJ's gonna draw a foul, and he gets everybody with that. All right, next segment, AJ Dybantsa. We're gonna talk about Leafs thoughts on AJ Dybantsa. I want you to make the argument for me. If I've never seen him play, or if I'm pro Cameron Boozer, pro AJ Dybantsa, or pro Darren Peterson, why do you think AJ Dybantsa is the number 1 pick, or could be the number 1 pick in this draft?
My first argument would be that he's the prototypical what you want in the NBA. Like if you look at the last 15 years, wings have dominated, and of course LeBron's a lot of that, but Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, you can Jason Tatum, you can go through the list, and you say when I build a franchise, I want a wing who can play both ways and initiate the offense. Doesn't have to be a point guard, but he's the primary advantage creator of an offense, and that's what every team's drafting. And you have a guy who's capable of scoring 25 to 30 by the time he's in his peak, and he can get you 5 boards, 5 assists. And that is an all-pro level player. And we talked about this last time. I don't think any of these guys should be seen under any other microscope than one that says these guys are already all-stars. Let's see which one is most likely to be an all-pro. And so I think AJ's the number 1 reason you take him number 1 is he's got the most defined path to stardom. You just say go out there, score the ball, play the way you want to play. And it's regardless of team, you put the ball in his hands and he can score, whether he's playing off ball or you play him like BYU is and let him use his back to the basket game, create advantages, score. Don't use that athleticism. He's going to go get stronger. So I just think he's the answer to the question of, hey, how do I want to build my basketball team? And you typically want a 6'9" coordinated wing who can handle and shoot the ball. And he fills that out better than just about any player that has fit those parameters that we've been saying, well, that's why we want this player. He's better than any player in that regard for the last 10 years. And I think I'd actually take Cooper over him. I want that to be clear. But I don't think of Cooper the same way I think of AJ. I think Cooper's a more complete basketball player. AJ's more prototypical wing scorer, though.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. If AJ were to come out after the Celtics won the championship, and you look at the Celtics, Jason Tatum 6'8", 6'9", however tall he is. Jaylen Brown 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". Like those guys are your give the ball to them on the wing. They're good enough playmakers and they can also mismatch hunt because of their size, their ability to shoot and draw fouls. They both rebound, they both defend, they both compete. And like I said, good enough playmakers. They both have grown tremendously as playmakers since coming out of college. And AJ is a lot in line of what those guys are. But if you look at the success that Shai Gilgeous had at 6'6", we don't know if he's a point guard. We don't know if he's a shooting guard. I know Leif is not the biggest Shai Gilgeous fan aesthetically, but he respects the game. And you sit here and say, who in this particular draft kind of reminds me of that, where, you know what, he just might be unguardable. Maybe that person is Darren Peterson. But it's like you said, this is that draft where you look at it and you say, we know these guys are more than likely going to be all-stars, but who in this particular draft is going to be that franchise player? Who's going to be the guy that we think can make deep playoff runs? Let me ask you this question, Leif. We know that AJ is it looks like an offensive savant. Do you have any issues, any qualms with the 3-point attempt rate for him right now? He's only attempting 2 a game, and it looks like he has to be extremely wide open for him to take those 2 3 pointers.
I don't know if I have an issue with the rate. I think his shot's too flat though. Like I watched him warm up, and he makes them, but they all just like slither over the front rim. There's very few swishes. There are concerns for me in terms of if he's playing off the ball, is he ready to shoot and catch and shoot it? Like they're very correctable. These are nitpicking things, but I mean Darren Peterson catches the ball and he could have two people hands in his face and in a phone booth, and he'd go up and shoot it and be ready to shoot it, and it would still go in. AJ is very selective about it and kind of plays this methodical. I'm going to get to my spot. In a weird way, it kind of reminds me of Carmelo Anthony. And I'm not saying this is a one-to-one because Carmelo is stronger and more physical in the way, but he controls the game in the way that like young Carmelo did, in the sense of, okay, like I don't need to shoot a really easy three. I'm going to get to my spot and impose my will. In the college game, AJ could impose his will on just about anyone and say, I'm going to get to my spot and elevate. But he could make life easier by pulling up that catch and shoot three. So the rate doesn't bother me much. I do think he needs to add arc. And I think it's even apparent when he shoots those turnarounds. If he doesn't soar up like to the point where he's basically shooting the ball even with the rim when he releases it, they usually miss short. And so I'm concerned about the arc, but I think that's very fixable because his rotation's great and he's got unbelievable coordination.
Yeah, arc is something that you can fix. I was at the combine, and I was watching Derek Queen build a house with his bricks, and they were all hitting the front of the rim. I watch Derek Queen basically every night, and he's like fixed his arc on his jump shot. He's almost like an 80% foul shooter right now. He hasn't extended his range to the NBA line yet, but eventually he will be. And you know he has great touch. But definitely arc is something that you can fix. I think personally that he's not as comfortable shooting the three off the catch because I think he's such a forward jumper, and that landing spot in between where somebody slightly contests, that kind of like messes with your head. But also at the same time, if he stood 2 3 feet behind the line rather than toes on the line, maybe he would feel more comfortable. But I do think it's a combination of three things. One, I can get any shot I want to. I don't have to necessarily shoot these, but eventually he should, especially in transition. I think he is starting to shoot more of those trailing threes in transition. Two, the jump shot is flat, but also, like I said, I think he's a forward jumper, and that may mess with his head as far as like, should I shoot this or should I just catch it and then get to my spot and back down? I want to shout out a Twitter friend of mine. I think his name is Boong, but he said that AJ Dybantsa reminds him of a lot of Jimmy Butler, where Jimmy Butler is a selective shooter. Jimmy Butler wants to get, not the defensive end, but the offensive end, draw fouls, play off of 2 feet. He wants to work out of the mid post, out of isolation. And I thought about it, I was like, you know what? He might be right. What are your thoughts about that?
I don't mind that at all.
The Jimmy Butler comparison?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of get to their spots similarly. They shoot a flat ball. The thing that would concern me about that, no slight to Jimmy Butler, is he's not like what I'd call a great shooter. He's a very good free throw shooter, very good mid-range get to a spot. So much of AJ's game that I envision at the next level is that he commands respect 25 feet out and then can blow by you with that really good first step that he takes. And we talked about this last time, super nitpicky, but if you're analyzing his gait, when he explodes going left, he can go dunk on your head. When he doesn't, it's very much like, okay, I have to back him down. It has to be methodical. And so I think he plays to his greatest strength in terms of those athletic gifts he does have if he's able to play from 25 feet out and explode to the rim as a counter to the ability to knock down a shot. Whereas Jimmy Butler, if you're playing him, you play off and expect contact. And I don't want AJ to necessarily be reliant on that. And I get that he does that in the college game because he is bigger, stronger, faster than most of these guys. But it's a different game in the NBA. And if the shot doesn't have that respect from that distance because of, like you said, he jumps forward and there's arc issues, I think it takes away a level of scoring that the best players have. And if we're going to compare, because they're going to be compared to one another all the time, the reason I don't think I'll change all season long about Darren Peterson, no matter how dominant AJ was in that second half, is I think Darren Peterson can have that type of spurt anytime. I don't think it's like out of nature for him. I felt like AJ was pressing, and it was a very good press to overcompensate, like, okay, I got to take over this game and win. I think Darren Peterson kind of like eases his way into those spurts where you just can't guard him because he can shoot from 30 feet out. He can blow by you and dunk. He can shoot a floater. He can stop off 2 feet and pass. And I just think it's easier for him to have those takeover surges without playing out of his skin.
Yeah, I'm ready for Darren Peterson to have that game where he plays 35, 36 minutes and he puts together two halves. He's averaging 20 right now in 3 games, and it's in like 24 minutes a game. Like to almost average a point a minute on his volume, and he's shooting. I think his 3-point rate is it's a little too high for me. It's at 50% of his shots are threes, and I think some of that is due to the hamstring. Maybe he doesn't trust, pushing R2 all the way to get to the basket. But when he is 100% healthy and when he does feel comfortable testing that hamstring, I think he has a game very similar to AJ's, but like probably better in the sense that because it's going to look different. I think he can make all those same passes, same plays that AJ did make. It may not look like it from the post, but he's going to have a game. I think a 30-point night in conference play where you're like, oh my god, he looks like one of the all-time great players because he's knocking threes down. He can post up. He's scoring. He's getting dunks in the half court, and he's crafty at drawing fouls too.
Here's a prediction for you, and I said this before the season. I think Darren Peterson will have multiple 40-point games in conference play. 40. Because they don't score very easily. The way they score is when he was out, was very much like play through the post. They have Bryson Tiller space, and they go back to what Bill Self is known for, of those high lows when they had Perry Ellis and Jamari Traylor and all these big guys. And those are very much like niche college names, but now it's Flory Badungo is a fantastic athlete near the rim, and then you have Tiller who can space it a little bit. And they'd have to set up these crazy high lows. Well, the team learned how to play without those guys, but none of them still really shoot that well and know how to play off the ball. Mm-hmm. So Darren Peterson comes back, and I think what's going to happen is they're going to set pick and roll with Flory. Flory's going to explode to the rim, and you're going to have to, tag the backside. People aren't shooting it well enough to respect, to garner the respect that the defense is going to be there. So it's going to be a lot of Darren Peterson getting downhill with the screen and stopping and popping or getting to the free throw line. And he's going to knock down his free throws. And then when he has those days, I expect him to shoot step-back threes. Like, in a weird way, it kind of reminds me of Damian Lillard. When he gets hot, it's like, okay, he sees the basket, and he's going to facilitate just enough, but he is a killer, and he's going to go get buckets. And so I think he's going to have a couple of 40 pieces.
Yeah, I hope we get to see those. Like I said, I think the only thing stopping that from happening is the hamstring injury. Again, hopefully, that he set out the majority of that second half against Missouri, but hopefully that was because they had, a comfortable enough lead where they didn't feel like they had to put him in. All right, last thing before we go, Leif, Utah Jazz fan, Leif, Utah resident, the number 1 pick in the draft. Leif is making the phone call in to Danny Ainge. Who are you selecting number 1?
6'6" guard out of Kansas, Darren Peterson.
All right, Leif, the Utah Jazz, they fall and they don't have the first pick. Darren Peterson is gone. Leif, who are you calling? Who are you telling Danny Ainge to draft at number 2?
I think I'd go 6'9" out of BYU, AJ Dybantsa. I think
All
so.
right. And okay, so we're looking at the Jazz roster, and we're taking you're throwing out name that starting 5 for me if you take Dybantsa number 2.
Keontae George. But if you keep Walker Kessler, I'd go Keontae George, Ace Bailey, AJ Dybantsa, Lowry Markkanen, Walker Kessler.
There you go. Super tall, long. All right. So putting you on the spot, kind of this last time, but the Utah Jazz falls to 4. Those 3 guys are gone. Leif, what do you do?
Oh, that's a nightmare situation. But
feels like it's every year for you guys. It's simply like a pick short of who you want. Even though Ace Bailey is, hold on real quick. Let me get your thoughts on Ace Bailey's season thus far. And it's crazy because we talked about Ace Bailey last year, and I was like, I don't like how he plays. I believe in his talent, and I just don't. I'm not feeling the dead ball. Bernard King, ISO, 17 feet from the basket, and shoot a turnaround jumper. And some of our fans of the show were like, this, that, and the other. And then you see him play for the Jazz, and like it's all movement shooting. So, what are your thoughts on Ace Bailey? I know he got off to a slower start. I think he was hurt, sick early on. Now he's eased his way into the starting lineup. But your thoughts on Ace Bailey, real quick?
I think he's been good. I think his talent's undeniable. When they give him the ball and say, hey, you know what, we're going to feature him in these offensive sets, and he's a primary option in these offensive sets, even as an off the ball guy, he converts. So I'm frustrated by the lack of time in terms of percentage of those sets that they're given to him. Like, why is Svi Mikhailuk higher on the scouting report for the Jazz and orchestrating these plays for Bryce Sensabaugh and Svi Mikhailuk over Ace? But in terms of Ace's performance, I think he's done well. I'd like to see him be a little more assertive when he has it. I think he's thinking too much, which is funny because everyone's like, oh, he's just a chucker and he doesn't do anything but shoot. Well, I think he's shackled himself in the sense of like trying to play team ball too much. And I'm all for passing. Like, I love passers. But I think at times, like, you're Ace Bailey. Like, you hold a lot of hopes for the Jazz. I want you to take those chances. And so I'm pleased, though. I think he's very good. But to answer your question about fourth pick, I think my 4 on my board would be Mikal Brown. I'd be very scared to take him fourth because we have Keontae George, and that's not the reason I'm scared. Like, I'm not saying Keontae's a more appealing guy. The reason I would still go with Brown over Caleb Wilson is I want someone who I think could be the number 1 guy on my team someday, and I don't see that with Wilson. I think he's a piece. I think he's an athlete that can impact the game and win for you, but he's not a number 1 dude, and I think Brown has a chance to be.
Anyone at... Okay, I'm going to rephrase this question. You land between 5 and 10, and it doesn't matter. No, let's say 6 and 10, because you kind of don't really want Caleb Wilson. Who are you selecting if that nightmare situation happens for the Utah Jazz? Not nightmare because,
I'd be interested in Avdalas. I'd be interested in Neokolis Avdalas because I think he does a lot of things that the modern NBA wants you to do. He can create from a number of different angles. I think he can shoot it, and he just puts pressure. Even if he's not putting rim pressure, he's able to see over the defense, and he becomes someone that in a pick and roll becomes very valuable. And I think he makes life easier for other guys the Jazz would have.
Interesting. I like that. You know what, Leif? I got to get you back on the show. We got to talk about Neokolis Avdalas because I feel like it's just me and you out here, man. And,
he's good.
He had 30 tonight. I mean, it was Western Carolina, but you could tell he was more intentional tonight. I got to watch some of the clips. He was a lot more aggressive. But we'll have a Neokolis Avdalas conversation, see if we can bring everybody to the table and join us on the Neokolis Avdalas. Is definitely a lottery pick conversation because, again, we're talking about 6'9". He can make every single pass. Jump shot is looking like it's okay. And he's got enough offensive creativity. I think he'll be better at NBA spacing. It looks like a no-brainer to me. But, I've seen, again, everybody's mock is different. Everybody's opinions are different. But I've seen him in the 20s. And I just feel like that's just too low for somebody as talented as he is. I mean, he'll only be 20 on draft night. He's not he's not like an old guy. And, I don't see why everyone is far behind us. But I guess that's our job, myself and Leif, to, bring the truth to light. Well, anything else before we go, Leif?
I'm excited to see how this season goes because there's a lot of guys that I think are really, really talented, and they just need the exposure of not necessarily us covering them, but just the season as it unfolds. You'll see guys and more guys highlighted prominently on their teams than most years. Most years we're kind of looking at like, hey, this guy did this, and when he had more opportunities, like. A lot of the best players have a ton of opportunity, and I'm excited to see that enter conference play, so you get to see them against equal competition more frequently.
Last thing before we go, since Leif, you are all things Arizona Wildcats on the Locked On Network. What are your initial thoughts on Braden Berry's slow start?
I think he's playing the game right. He's just shooting poorly. I will say I don't necessarily see him as this like big time athlete. I see him more, and I'm not comparing them 1-to-1, but more of the ilk of Con Knipple in terms of play off 2 feet, get to spots, elevate, and score. The thing is, you got to shoot the ball to command that respect to then attract the attention. He's gotten better each game recently. I thought he was very, very good, in fact, against Auburn. He just isn't shooting the ball as well as he'd like. Right now, I'd imagine he'd probably lean towards coming back to Arizona, but you never know exactly what they're thinking, what their internal goals are. But if he starts shooting the ball well, I've been impressed with his defense, and I think it opens up more of the driving avenues because he's not like a blow-by athlete, but he's a heady, two-footed player. So I'm cautiously optimistic in the sense that like sometimes it's just hard to get out of a slump when you're on a really good team, and like those shots mean a ton. You got to hit them when you get them. But if he starts shooting well, I think it opens up a lot for Arizona, and it opens up a lot of opportunity for him to improve his draft stock.
Yeah, that's Braden Burries. I don't want to sound like a hater, but like this game against Auburn, in which they won by 30, but this was his first like good game of the season against a Power 4 team. He struggled against Florida, was in foul trouble early. He struggled against UCLA, struggled against Connecticut. Had some good games against some lower level teams, but this is the first time that he was able to see the ball go in. As far as his draft stock goes, I agree with you. If he had to make the decision today, it'd be a no-brainer to. I mean, you probably just have to test, but it doesn't look like he'd be a first-round pick. But maybe this game against Auburn, he saw the ball go in. I think a lot can change during conference play. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it because I know that some people are still holding on to his stock, considering he was a McDonald's All-American. I believe he was a top 15 guy coming out of high school, even though he was a little older. And I know he got off to a slower start. Well, that concludes today's episode, NBA Draft Junkies Podcast. I got my guy Leif on here. You'll be seeing my guy Leif on here a lot more often because we look like he was a black and white teammate. God, I can't even. I would say Stockton and Malone, but I'm the point guard in this conversation, so I don't know how this is gonna work. But me and Leif, we got the chemistry going.
I got a crazy one for you. I'll be JJ Redick. You got Chris Duhon for some like old school college basketball one.
Do I want to go with Duhon? You know what, man? I remember when I used to read the old NBA Draft.net mocks. Like, he was mocked at like 5 as a freshman, and it just never worked out for him. I mean, he played in the NBA for a while, but he was a guy that had a lot of hype coming out of Duke. I can't take
the issue is I like playing point guard too, so it's hard for me to think of the 2-guard one. I have a lot the opposite way.
Man, as I get older, man, I gotta play point. Well, if we play half court, I'm scoring, but in full court, I gotta play point guard, man. I don't feel like my full court chops or my scoring prowess is declining. Me and Leif can get on the court one day, and that may just be an episode of the NBA Draft Junkies Podcast. Leif, where can they find you at, man?
My Twitter is just my name, like I said. If you want to listen to Locked On Wildcats, you're more than welcome to. I would appreciate it because I'm talking Arizona hoop, #1 in the country right now, and then I'm all over the place on Twitter. So if you want to talk college hoops in general, NBA draft, I'm always voicing my thoughts there.
All right, that's today's episode. I am James, NBA Draft Junkies Podcast. We are out.